What if I told you there's a city where aristocrats and beggars lived in the same building, separated only by a few flights of stairs, where body snatchers prowled graveyards under moonlight, stealing corpses to sell to surgeons, where one of the greatest intellectual revolutions in human history exploded from cramped, filthy streets that hadn't changed in centuries? Welcome to 18th century Edinburgh City, literally carved from volcanic rock, trapped by its own medieval walls, yet somehow becoming one of the most important places in the entire world. I've used modern AI to reconstruct this extraordinary city exactly as people experienced it centuries ago. Not the romanticized postcards or tourist myths, but the raw, complex, utterly fascinating reality. What you're about to see is a place of extreme contradictions, impoverished, yet intellectually brilliant, ancient, yet visionary, confined, yet ambitious, beyond measure. So let's step back in time and explore the Edinburgh that changed everything. We start at the most obvious place, Edinburgh Castle, the fortress that quite literally defines this city's entire existence. At the close of the 17th century, Edinburgh is shaped entirely by its geology. A massive plug of ancient volcanic rock thrusts the castle 300 feet above the valley floor, creating an almost impregnable stronghold. The city itself clings desperately to the rocky ridge below, hemmed in completely by medieval walls that haven't moved in generations. The castle isn't just a pretty landmark. It's the city's geographic and political center, housing military garrisons, storing gunpowder and weapons, holding political prisoners, and serving occasionally as a royal residence. The Union flag flies above a constant, unavoidable reminder that since 1707, Scotland has been bound to England under a single parliament. That flag tells you everything you need to know about the tensions simmering below the surface of this city. From the southern edge of the old town, your view opens toward Arthur's Seat, another volcanic remnant rising dramatically beyond the city's limits. Tall stone tenements cling to the ridge like limpets on a rock, their facades pressed against the absolute limits of the medieval core. Beyond them stretch open fields and sparse roads, the margin where the city's crush in density finally gives way to possibility. This is where you can actually see the tension between confinement and escape made physical. Down in the grass market, the castle looms overhead like a permanent shadow. This open square serves as one of Edinburgh's principal marketplaces, and Rayter Grimley, its occasional place of execution. Merchants trade livestock and grain. Libraries haul goods across unpaved, rutted, slick streets. The authority represented by that castle overhead is never forgotten, not for a single moment. Now, step into one of Edinburgh's closest those narrow passageways that cut between buildings and you enter a completely hidden world. These inner courtyards are where the city's poorest residents live, often in cellars actually below ground level. Light enters in thin shafts. If it enters at all, smoke drifts constantly from windows. Laundry hangs wherever there's space. Dogs scavenge in corners. Privacy here isn't a right, it's a rare and precious luxury that most people never experience. The Canongate runs east from the high street toward Holyrood Abbey, and though it's broader than those hidden closes, it's still tightly built. Stone tenements rise, several stories high, each building housing multiple families stacked floor upon floor. Carts rattle constantly over cobblestones. Libraries push handcarts. Women carry bundles between doorways. This is urban density pushed to its absolute breaking point, and yet somehow it works. 3 miles north of the old town lies Leith, Edinburgh's vital connection to the wider world. Here the water of Leith meets the Firth of Forth, and ships from the Baltic, the Low Countries, and France unload their cargo constantly. Timber arrives from Norway, wine from Bordeaux, salt from the Netherlands. The quayside is absolute chaos. The best kind of chaos, the kind that means commerce and money and connection. Stevedores haul barrels from ship to shore, their backs bent under impossible loads. Merchants inspect shipping manifests and argue furiously over tariffs. Customs officers move between warehouses, checking seals, recording duties, making sure the crown gets its cut. The air absolutely reeks of tar, salt, and fish. Leith is rougher than Edinburgh proper, less constrained by the old hierarchies that dominate the capital. Sailors from foreign ports mingle in taverns. Smugglers work quietly in the shadows of legitimate trade, moving goods the government would rather they didn't. This is where Edinburgh breathes. where goods and ideas flow in from across the North Sea, feeding the city's growing appetite for luxury, knowledge, and profit. Without Leith, Edinburgh suffocates. It's that simple. At the eastern end of the Royal Mile stands Holyrood Palace, the monarch's official residence in Scotland. Though the royal court packed up and moved to London after the Union, the palace remains as a symbol of Scotland's former sovereignty. Its towers and turrets speak of a time when Edinburgh was a capital in its own right, not some provincial outpost. The palace grounds stretch toward Arthur's Seat, offering a stark contrast to the cramped, filthy old town. Here, there's actual, space-open, parkland for riding and hunting. The nobility still gather occasionally for ceremonial occasions, maintaining the polite fiction of royal presence even when the monarch is hundreds of miles away in London. Inside, the state apartments preserve the memory of Mary, Queen of Scots. The chambers where David Rizzio was brutally murdered in 1566 have become a site of morbid fascination. Visitors walk through rooms that once hosted European diplomats and now stand mostly empty, haunted by Scotland's violent, turbulent past. The palace is beautiful, certainly, but there's melancholy in every corridor. From above, Edinburgh reveals its extraordinary compression. The castle commands the western height. The city stretches eastward along the ridge, a dense assembly of stone and slate, confined absolutely within its medieval walls. Church spires punctuate the skyline like stone fingers pointing at heaven. Beyond the walls, the land opens dramatically to the Firth of Forth and the hills of Fife beyond. This is a city trapped between its medieval past and the aspirations of a more rational, enlightened age. Behind the grand facades of the Royal Mile lie shared courtyards where neighbors conduct the daily business of survival. The buildings are worn, their plaster crumbling, their stone darkened and stained by centuries of coal smoke. Yet life persists. People trade, argue, gossip, endure. These hidden spaces form the social fabric of the old town places, where rank and poverty exist literally side by side, often in the same building. South of the Grassmarket lies Greyfriars Kirkyard, one of Edinburgh's principal burial grounds. Here, the dead are stacked as densely as the living in the tenements above. Weathered tombstones crowd together, many bearing the names of Covenanters, religious martyrs, executed for defying the Crown's authority over the Scottish Church. The kirkyard is quiet, certainly, but it's not peaceful. Stories circulate constantly of body snatchers who dig up fresh graves under cover of darkness to sell corpses to the city as physicians and anatomists. Medical education demands cadavers, you see, and the law provides far too few, so the resurrection men work by moonlight, filling a macabre but surprisingly profitable niche in Edinburgh's economy. It's grim, certainly, but it's also absolutely necessary for medical progress. Among the stones, you can read Edinburgh's entire history in names and dates. Merchants, lawyers, ministers, tradesmen all, equal now beneath the earth. The living come here to remember, to mourn, and sometimes to conduct business away from prying eyes. Death and commerce intertwine in Edinburgh, as they do everywhere in this contradictory city. Military presence is woven completely into 18th century Edinburgh's fabric. Cavalry and infantry assemble regularly before fortified gates, a constant reminder that Scotland is, whether it likes it or not, a garrison nation. Since the Jacobite uprisings, the British government has maintained troops in Edinburgh to ensure order and suppress rebellion. These soldiers are both protectors and occupiers, depending entirely on your political loyalties. The High Street is Edinburgh's spine, a narrow, bustling artery connecting castle to palace. Lawyers in elaborate wigs walk beside sedan chairs, carrying wealthy passengers. Merchants call out their wares aggressively. Servants haul barrels and sacks. A soldier in a red coat stands among the crowd, a quiet reminder of authority. Above it all, the Tron Kirk's clock tower marks the passing hours. This is Edinburgh's public stage, where all ranks of society meet and negotiate daily life, in full view of each other. Now here's where things get properly interesting. On the southern edge of the old town stands the University of Edinburgh, founded back in 1582, but now entering its absolute golden age. The lecture halls buzz with ideas that will genuinely reshape the entire world. Professors teach medicine, philosophy, mathematics, and natural philosophy, what we now call science. Students crowd into anatomy theaters to watch dissections. In chemistry laboratories, Experiments test the fundamental nature of matter itself. Philosophers debate human nature, morality, and the very foundations of knowledge. This is the engine of the Scottish Enlightenment. A movement that will produce thinkers like David Hume and Adam Smith means that will fundamentally change how humanity understands itself. The university draws students from across Britain and Europe, bringing both wealth and intellectual ferment. To Edinburgh, coffee houses near the college become centers of debate, where ideas are exchanged as readily as goods in the marketplace. The old city, for all its squalor and crushing constraint, is becoming a center of learning that rivals anywhere in Europe. Think about that for a moment. This cramped, filthy, medieval city, trapped on a volcanic rock, is producing some of the most advanced thinking in the entire world. That's the Edinburgh paradox in one sentence. To the north, across the Norlaca fetid body of water that serves as both barrier and open, sewer plans are being drawn for something completely unprecedented. The new town will be Edinburgh's answer to its medieval confinement. Planned streets, symmetrical squares, elegant townhouses for the city's elite. The vision is genuinely ambitious. A rational city for a rational age, where wide streets allow for air and light, where public gardens replace cramped closes. But for now, it exists mostly on paper and in the excited conversations of architects and city planners. The old town remains Edinburgh's heart, resistant to change, dense with centuries of history. Some people see the new town as Edinburgh's brilliant futura, chance to shed the constraints of its medieval past. Others see it as a betrayal, an abandonment of the mixed society that defines the old town, where lawyer and beggar might live in the same building, separated only by a few flights of stairs. In a single tenement, Edinburgh reveals its everyday reality. At street level, a shopkeeper sells pies and porter-hot food and dark beer for laborers and tradesmen. Above the shop, families' lives stacked floor upon floor, each level its own small world. Timber juts precariously over stone. Smoke blackens the walls. This is the old town compressed into one building. Commercial below, domestic above, everything pressed tightly together. Edinburgh, at the turn of the 18th century, is a city of absolute contradictions. Ancient, yet aspiring, confined, yet ambitious, impoverished, yet intellectually rich beyond measure. The volcanic rock that gives it shape also traps it, forcing a density and proximity that breeds both bitter conflict and extraordinary creativity. In its closes and courtyards, its markets and lecture halls, its taverns and kirkyards, Edinburgh contains the full spectrum of human experience. From the castle heights to the ported Leith, from the execution grounds of the grass market to the debating chambers of the university, this is a city where past and future collide head-on. The Union flag may fly over Edinburgh Castle, but Scotland's identity persists in every stone, every accent, every small act of defiance. Edinburgh endures, it adapts, and above all, it survives a city carved from volcanic rock, as stubborn and enduring as the geology that shaped it. If this glimpse into Edinburgh's extraordinary past fascinated you, tell me in the comments what you'd like to explore next. Ancient Rome, medieval Paris, revolutionary Boston. I'm building a time machine powered by AI and historical research, and I want to know where you're dying to visit. Smash that like button if Edinburgh blew your mind, and subscribe because we're traveling through history together. And trust me, there's so many more incredible cities waiting to be brought back to life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the past.